Steve, I've got you on first time. That wasn't too bad.
Yes, man, that's a great sign.
Means good things are ahead. How are you going?
I'm good. New York is freezing.
Australia's really hot. It's actually Australia Day for us today, so
Oh,
it's
cool.
a nice sunny day.
What does that mean? What happens on Australia Day?
Well, it's a bit controversial now. So, Australia Day is a day where we commemorate when the first settlers from England came here and technically colonized the country. So, like maybe a couple of decades ago, it was just sort of a quaint day to be like, oh, it's Australia when we first recognized it back in like the day when we first, as people came to this country. But now it's sort of seen as colonialization day. So there's a lot of problems with the day where it's seen as very disrespectful to our Indigenous Aboriginal community too. So even though it's a holiday, it's a bit of an erroneous one for a lot of people.
Oh, kind of like Christopher Columbus Day here.
Yes, exactly right. Very similar to Christopher Columbus Day.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you for having me on. I'm excited.
Yes, no, excited to have you on. Just for the benefit of my audience, can you share a bit about what it is that you do and what you're working through at the moment with your clients?
Yes. So I am a gay men's life coach. My program is called Our Divine Potential because the whole point of the work that I do with them is to get them to the awareness that their potential is really limitless and divine, and that is discovered through self-awareness and developing self-love and a practice of where you are aware you're building your self-awareness to heal, grow, change your life, and live your divine potential, truly, and right now we are mostly working. Each client has their own individual goals and their own individual traumas and beliefs that they're working through, but the general census of what I do is to build a a very firm foundation within yourself and your relationship with yourself, because you to make you your best friend, to develop such a strong relationship with yourself that your other relationships just reflect that.
Mm. I think that's so valuable. I think that listening to what you said, having that self-awareness, self-love, being your own best friend is really the foundation for a very long, healthy, happy life. And I feel that for a lot of gay men, we struggle with that a lot because we aren't really given the best introduction to a self-loving life because more often than not, as we've been growing up, we've been given a lot of criticism for who we are. In fact, many of us feel like we are not enough, which leads into a lot of complications, which we'll get into today. And just for the benefit of your audience, so my name is Ken. I'm a relationship coach for gay men. I help my audience, single gay men, to overcome rejection, heartbreak, identify red flags, and to attract open, honest, committed partners. And I think linking onto that whole idea of being our best friend, I know that one of the biggest challenges for a lot of gay men is that we feel that we have to appear in very particular ways in order to be appreciated, particularly when it comes to body image. What's your experience with your clients around how they look and how they feel about themselves?
Well, I I would definitely say, from my experience working with my clients and my experience with hosting a platform that is geared towards the gay community, when it comes to body image, there's a recurring theme of, I know that loving myself and how I look is the answer, but it's not that easy. It's not that easy, you know? And I'm trying my best to really embody that, but subconsciously, do I really believe that yet? You know, and that's a lot of that's a lot of gay men are in that space, whether they're aware of it or not. You know, it's because we're all different, you
Mm.
know, and we grew up in a world where the ideal gay man had a six pack and was over 6 feet, and that there's a lot of people who don't meet that, you know, and we I feel that what we see within the gay community, and not just within the gay community, probably just within society itself, is people in a constant state of trauma response. The trauma
Mm.
that they experience of comparing themselves to what they are being fed, you know? And that can lead to a lot of pain. That can, body images lead to anxiety, depression, eating disorders, you know, and I believe, what was it, 15. So I read it somewhere and I wrote it down. I want to 15% of gay men have an eating disorder, and only 1% of the gay community is actually happy with their bodies. 1%. That is so small, So that makes you think, if there's about 99% of us who feel the same way, what is stopping us from treating each other the way we truly want to? Also, that's a really important question, you know?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it says a lot. And I want to tap into that thing that you said about trauma too, because I think that when we compare ourselves, we are going to be triggered. And that is, as you said, going to lead to a lot of things like depression, anxiety about how we compare ourselves to others. And I think a lot of that is rooted in the way we've been brought up. I think that when it comes to how most of us have grown up in school, particularly, I'm not sure what yours was like, Steve, but for mine, growing up in an all boys school, it was almost never said, but it was almost, visually, there was an unspoken rule that if you were a popular guy who had the attention of girls and guys, you were someone who was more physically active, more physically attractive, and someone who was more generally high achieving in a lot of areas of their life. So I find it fascinating in retrospect how, for me growing up, that was something that was impressed upon me as a bit of a value, that because I did grow up very overweight and not in a very healthy environment. So I went down the fitness bandwagon very hard. And I definitely have to say that I've come out much more appreciative and self-loving of my body, but it wasn't always the case. Like, it would always be this sort of perfectionism experience where I constantly feel like I was never enough, because I was always comparing myself to, you know, people online, the porn that we watch, and also to what we see on magazines. And it's quite confronting, because I think that for a lot of us, we judge ourselves based on these ideal images that sell really well, because we desire a lot of that. And I think that's where part of the challenge is for a lot of people that I work with too. Like, I know one of my clients at the moment, we talk a lot about this, and we talk a lot about, body image and its relevance in relationships. And I think that it's something that, whether it's subconscious or conscious, I think a lot of gay men really do worry a lot about how they're perceived physically by other people.
Yeah, because what we all want is acceptance,
Mm-hmm.
because we didn't feel accepted for who we are, and I feel like body image is such a big topic within the gay community because, well, we can't control our sexuality, but we can control our body, So then we put these like unrealistic, really out their pressure on ourselves to worry about body image, because it's going to give us some sort of an acceptance that we really, really desire, you know?
Mm.
And I feel that if we can all just really acknowledge the fact that we grew up in, okay, so like to go back to what you're saying about, you know, growing up in Australia and going to school, you know, for me in New York City, growing up in the 80s and 90s, you know, it was all about Marky Mark. It was all about Abercrombie bags that had a six-pack guy on it, and that is on MTV and VH1. That's all that you saw, you know, and that's all you can identify with as far as like what an ideal man should look like. And when we realized that we grew up with this unrealistic expectation that we put on ourselves, maybe we can ask ourselves, does it really need to stay there, you know? And I feel that we also need to acknowledge that we adopted these ideologies for the sake of being accepted and to just kind of make sense of the world and find a way to survive it all, you know, even though it was actually killing us, you know. So it's like, well, this is what happened to us, this is where we're at now. Let's be honest about how we feel, what we need, and what we truly want our community to look like, you know, by maybe by simply asking each other and by simply realizing that, hey, what I really want from others, you know, let me give to myself first, so then I can know how to give it to other people, because we're all just wanting the same thing, you know. We want to be included. We want a sense of belonging. So having the pressure of body image can really hurt us, and we have the power to stop the pain and be, you know, our own heroes for ourselves, and then also help each other, you know.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you've said. I think one thing that stood out to me from what you said that I love was this idea of acceptance. I think that, you know, human beings, if we look at the way we're designed, is that we're social creatures. So when we're excluded from a tribe of people, we are really hurt by that. Because a lot of us place our self-worth on the opinions of others, which is understandable. And we also know too that if we're cast out and alone, we will die, because that's just the way we're built. So I think deep down, we, you know, as you're saying, you look at the Abercrombie and Fitch models, you look at Marky Mark from the 80s, even into the early 90s, and you think, wow, people are all really into him. If I am famous like him, people will love me because I'd see everyone else, you know, loving his appearance, and therefore it would be the same for me too. And I think that that sort of engineers the thought process in our minds, that that's sort of where we want to be and what we want to look like. And no moral judgment to anyone who's on that path themselves. But I think having been there, one thing I can say in hindsight is that, and this is going to sound a bit strange, but I actually think it's a form of internalized homophobia, because we're reducing our own identity to our appearance. We are saying that in order to be part of a gay community, we need to be only, you know, a portion of our full lived experience, which I think is very, you know, on one hand, yeah, it might give you a sense of acceptance, but at the end of the day, I don't think it actually gives you self-acceptance.
Yes, I was actually going to think that. I was like, well, what's it makes it difficult for people to accept themselves. And if we can start there by accepting ourselves first, we can learn how to accept other people, you know? And I mean, just imagine if we all stopped and decided to accept each other as we are. What would that bring, you know? And that might be, you know, kind of far-fetched for a lot of people to, or a concept for people to grab, might be difficult for them to grab, but start with yourself. You know, what beliefs are you holding on to when it
Mm.
comes to your body that are not truly serving you, and you almost feeling like you're adopting for the sake of what, and in the end, is it really, really worth it? You know, I mean, just it's it's interesting because like the concept of food, you know, food is a very big thing in our culture as far as socializing, and when we're together going at brunch, think about how many times we are double thinking and
Mm.
trying to think about what we're eating in front of these other gay guys, you know? And that's like added, that goes to the body image, that goes to the added pressure. And it's, you can look at how one belief about how you think it needs to look spills into every part of your life,
Yep.
whether you're conscious of it or not, you know? And that's what leads to the anxiety and the depression. That's what leads to the eating disorders. And that's what leads to the suicides. That's what leads to the, to the relationships that are based off of something that's like superficial, or something
Hmm.
that is not truly fulfilling. And you know what's really funny too? Um, just because you get into a relationship doesn't mean your body image issues go out the window. There's plenty
No.
of men who still feel completely pressured to have a great body even within their current relationship. And that says a lot too. And that's something to really look at too. So it's like, when's it gonna end for us? And how can we change it? you know
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that, this is an issue that was actually brought up in a book that I read recently called Straitjacket, which was amazing. It was all about the mental health of gay men. And the author was originally an editor for a magazine called Attitude, which I think had predominantly a gay male audience. And he always said his biggest struggle was that he knew audiences loved having, you know, flesh out, having really sexy ripped guys as their covers, because that was what sold. Anytime there was a healthy looking couple, like two old men, or Stephen Fry, or any of these particular people that were, with to some degree or another, were just like normal looking, they would undersell, and it would just not work nearly as well as the more sex orientated images were. And so I think that the problem for a lot of the problem is, I think, a lot of what we see in the media. I think that the problem is also in the way the diet we've been consumed in terms of how we look at people. Like, I know for me, for instance, one thing that I have done consciously to actually appreciate people more than by the way they look is to actually remove models from my Instagram feed, because it was just getting to a point where I'd be not only comparing myself to them, but I get to the point where I was just like, this is unhealthy for me. Like, this is actually starting to really impact my own self-worth. And then it also got to the point too where I started, being really mindful of the kind of media that I consume on a regular basis where that was present, because I think that that sort of hypersexualized look of a very ripped, muscular man, yes, it's attractive, but why is that attractive? I think we've just been fed on this diet of thinking that that's exactly what we should be aiming for. And as a consequence, and this happens even in heterosexual relationships too, you can see so many of these relationships where a guy or a girl is so conscious of their appearance, but at the same time, there's no substance to their relationship because their entire world is external validation. So that's their hit. That's what keeps them there in these very unsustainable relationships.
Do you feel gay men might have it harder within body image issues compared to other people?
I think that it's vastly underreported, and I dare say it would probably be higher than what women might even be going through on a day-to-day basis, which I know might shock and also be controversial for a lot of people to hear. But I think the reality is that I think women are more ahead of the curve now in terms of the way in which they're handling the situation. That's just my observation and my experience. And maybe I'm biased as a gay man, but one thing I have noticed for sure is that you go to gay bars, for instance, and they're very particular about the kind of imagery they use to promote themselves, which is, you know, falling in line with what we've talked about too. Whereas I feel that the marketing that's presented to women is becoming much more shape friendly, meaning that you can go to H&M, see women of various sizes, races, ethnicity, and it doesn't have that same quality of, it doesn't have that same, I suppose, you know, one size fits all approach to what should be an ideal body shape. And I think that we as a community are really struggling with that because I think we have a lot of self-loathing, whether we admit it to ourselves or not. And I think that's what leads into a lot of this.
Yes, yeah, it makes me think, well, like the women are kind of getting it, right? About that all beautiful, all real women have curves, all sizes, XYZ. Like, why are we missing the mark? Why are we still promoting, like if you Google gay men, you're gonna see the first stuff that pops up is somebody like,
oh yeah. I know what you're talking about.
you know, you'll see guys, you know, in the gym, or a guy with his shirt off and he definitely has abs and stuff like that. And I think it goes in tandem with our own issues of, you know, feeling that we need to be attractive just to be liked. And then also just like the wounded masculine energy that's just across the planet, no matter what you got in between your legs and no matter who you love, you know? So it's like we have wounded masculine trauma just for being men, and then and what it means to be a man, you know? And then we have the trauma of, you know, feeling oppressed because we love other men. You know, so it's just like it's added pressure, it's added self-hate, it's added expectations, all of that.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm just reading some of the comments that have come through here. Gay Men and Blog talk about how capitalism within the gay community promotes unrealistic and unhealthy body standards for gay men because sex sells. That's true at a surface level. I think an underlying root of that, however, is our own feelings of inadequacy. So it's kind of like people who I feel, you know, have a poor money mindset. I think that capitalism fuels that too, because there's always that disparity between the rich and the poor. I'm not saying that, you know, capitalism is necessarily at fault. What I'm saying is I think a lot of this starts at a much deeper level, and I agree with where this is generally going. And I know that another person also said, look, it's that cool guy. They wrote, Tom of Finland drawings back in the 1950s and 1970s on gay magazines helped start those unrealistic body standards among gay men. Pure fantasy for the masses. Yeah, on that note of fantasy, I really want to touch on that because I think that's a really interesting thing. You know, I think for a lot of gay men, if we've grown up in a very harsh environment, we tend to look for escapism. And I think that we do associate more with, you know, the more fantastical elements of what we could achieve, especially if we were ripped and more muscular, because we think, oh, cool, then people will appreciate me, people will see me rebelling against society and all this sort of stuff too. So I think that, you know, going now into how do we fix this, I think that at a surface level for clients who come to work with you and I, you know, I think this is something I've always said to my clients. I said, you know, if you want to look the part, you want to be physically attractive, I'm never going to stop you because that's something you want for yourself. Sometimes I think people will say things like, oh, you know, I want to swipe on the hot guys and they're not swiping with me. And I'm like, is that because you want to feel attractive in yourself? But I think that's the problem, is that sometimes we want what we want because we don't have it. And so it's sort of like a never-ending goose chase of never feeling good about ourselves. And I think at a deeper level, I just think that the systematic abuse that many gay men go through in school would need to be addressed, because I think that for a lot of us, you know, when we turn to fantasy, when we turn to escapism from the world that we live in, no matter how traumatic it is, I think a lot of us look to more powerful, muscular men as a source of like, oh, well, this is perhaps that freedom and independence that I'm looking for to get me out of this terrible environment that I'm in.
Yeah, I definitely think it starts. It's they catch us when we're young, you know, and they impression us when we're young, and we get conditioned and programmed as far, you know. Uh, there's an hourglass. Okay, are you still there? Okay, it was just there. I thought I lost connection for a second.
I saw that. I was a bit worried about that too, but I think we're still here, which is good.
Yeah, we're good. No, yeah, we were conditioned and programmed so heavily, so it's we have a lot of deconditioning to do and reprogramming to do, and it starts with having conversations like this. You know, how have you seen body image issues affect relationships with the men that you work with?
Oh boy. In a variety of ways. In a variety of ways. I think one of the most pronounced ones that I have worked with at this time, oh my gosh, I can actually share an example of one that was really bothering me. I know that there was someone who said to one of my clients recently, they were on a date, and the guy basically said to them, hey, you know, basically the suggestion was something like, normally I date guys who are more attractive and more muscular, so if we go out together, we should work out. And the impression that was left in my client's mind was, oh, he'll only sleep with me if I'm more physically attractive. Now, me as the coach, with all the experience and knowledge that I have, I was looking at that going, far out, that's so bad. Like, that's such a red flag. And I even like spelled it out and said, why are you basing your self-worth on this guy's unrealistic requirement of how you should look? If he's not satisfied with you now, what makes you think he's ever going to be satisfied with you at all? That's a terrible thing to sign yourself up for. And look, we all learn. I don't 100% know if that was exactly what the guy meant to say, but if it was, then I'm deeply worried about that. I've had another client mention to me that, you know, he had gone to therapy because of his obsession with his body image, and that he feels that he's just not getting anywhere with that and he's not getting on track of that. I've had another who has said to me that in order to have more people be attracted to him on dating apps, he needs to look more physically the part. And I just think this is, you know, I know what like the underlying issues are, and I've talked about that too, but it's everywhere. It's rampant. And I think that it's killing a lot of dating. I mean, look, and the thing is, often I get asked, like, you know, oh, Ken, you're an attractive guy. Like, you know, how does that work for you in dating? And I'm like, well, to be completely honest, it hasn't actually changed much. I mean, I still swipe on people. I get people that I match with. I communicate with them. I meet them in the flesh. Does it actually mean that I want to be with that person? Well, if they don't make me feel good and I'm not attracted to them, then probably not. So it's not because I have unrealistic expectations. It's because, you know, I think that I've learned over time that if I'm working on my body, it's for myself. It's not for the appreciation of other people. And I don't hold myself to that. Like the other day, I looked at myself and I thought, I want to work out, like I want to do more of this. You know, I want to work out on something that I haven't done before. But that was because I was bored with what I was doing and I wanted variety, not because I was thinking, oh, I look fat today, or I look this, or I look that, which are valid thoughts that people go through. I get it. But I'm not comparing myself to anyone. I'm just comparing myself to yesterday.
Right. I think a big thing that for people to something that they should try to take on is a question you can ask yourself is, how can you love what is? How can you just love what is? And what's stopping you from loving yourself as you are? You know? And when we can at least be honest about, well, this is why I don't love me, or this is why I feel like I need to change, simply ask yourself, how do you treat yourself by holding that belief? You know, how do you treat others by holding that belief? You know, what is life looking like with you holding that belief? You know, what would life look like with that, if that belief was gone? You know, and if we can be happy with what is, that changes our whole energetic output, that changes our whole perspective to then experience more of what we want. And we could end up surprising ourselves and realizing that, hey, you know, I actually don't need that six pack, and I don't need my boyfriend to have that six pack either, because I've learned to love what is. And when it's hard to love what is, you ask yourself, what is keeping me from loving what is? You know, because listen, babe, you could die tomorrow. You could step outside and a brick will fall on your head. You are deserving of love right now. You are deserving of loving yourself right now. And if it's hard for you to do that, simply ask yourself, well, what's keeping me from that? And what's blocking you from that self-love? Is it really worth it in the end for it to be there? You know?
Mm, I completely agree with you. And I love that question of like, how are you treating yourself when you are doing what you're doing? Like, and I think that's such a powerful question to ask people. In your experience, Steve, with some of your clients, I can only assume body image comes up quite a number of times. Have you been able to work with clients to get them at least a little bit over the line to being more self-loving of themselves?
All I work about, all we work on is how we can love ourselves in the moment. And by simply looking, changing our perspective and realizing that the beliefs that we have were simply something that we adopted for the sake of trying to fit in. But
Mm,
you know, I'm all about self-love, and I'm all about like, listen, well, what what's making it hard for you to love yourself now, you know? And I have my clients do a bragging journal when it's hard for them to love themselves. I'm like, listen, you might not be where you might not be where you want to be, but where can you focus on something that you can love now? You know,
mm,
start, you know, like, what about you is lovable? Instead of focusing on what you think is unlovable, what about you is lovable? So then their body image, their self image changes. So, and then the body image will start will follow, you know. And it's all about like I said, being your own best friend. Make you the safest person to be around.
mm.
You know, make you
Yeah.
the favorite person to be around. You know, get truly candid with yourself. Sometimes you have to just be honest. But listen, I really don't like my fat gut. Or I really don't like my flat ass. Say it to yourself. See what that feels like. See how it feels holding on to that belief, and then ask yourself, what is the worst case scenario that could happen if I continue to hold on to this? Now, is that where I want to walk to? Is that where I want to end up? You know, I always start with self-awareness. I always start with, like, you know, start somewhere, start small, start just getting real with how you feel, and then realizing, like, is this how, if I had to write out, if I had a blank piece of paper and I get to write down every belief that I had about myself and about life, with the beliefs that I currently have, would I put them on the paper or would I not? And you, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to add those limiting beliefs that you have now. You wouldn't put that on that new blank piece of paper. So start believing and start working towards believing what you truly want to believe, and that is by beginning to learn to love what is. You know, and when that's hard, you go and find support. You find support with either a coach or a therapist, or you find support with just a friend that you can be completely honest with, you know. And you be your own support as well. You say, hey self, you know, this is how I feel, this is how I want to feel. What can get me to feeling that way without having to change who the fuck I am? Because I shouldn't
Mm.
have to. I shouldn't have to, you know?
Yeah. I completely agree. I completely agree with you on that. I think that two things that just resonated so hard with me is, the feeling that we have when we hold on to those beliefs, because it's a really horrible feeling. It's just a complete feeling of inadequacy, and it's like, great, this isn't helping me. And those of us, who've been to therapy, we know that thoughts control our actions. So if you're giving yourself those thoughts, well, then what's that going to do? Oh, I'm going to start binge eating. I'm going to start, start going on restrictive diets. I'm going to start doing all this crazy stuff because I feel inadequate about myself. And, in some worst case scenarios too, it just continues to fuel that feeling of inadequacy against other people who don't even know you. You essentially pit yourself against phantoms in your mind who don't even know you, thinking that you're somehow physically not even that lovable to begin with. And I love what you said at the end of that too, which is you don't need to change the fuck who you are. And I completely agree with that too. I think that, if people, whether it be my clients or anyone else, look, if they want to go through a radical transformation, my answer is go ahead. Because if that's what you want to do, then maybe that's part of your learning. Maybe that's part of you figuring out whether or not you're actually right or wrong. Because at the end of the day, I can tell you, listen, if you do this, this is going to be the consequence, and you still want to drive 90 miles an hour into a brick wall. I've done my due diligence as far as I'm concerned, and though that may sound harsh, the reality is that sometimes the only way people learn is actually to walk through that and to learn for themselves. And I think that when it comes to our body image, if there's one thing I always tell people is you will never feel satisfied if you continue to run this gamut. The number of people on both ends, if you are the one with the attractive body, you'll be chasing the next attractive iteration of your body and then never be satisfied with that when you get it. And that can also lead into steroid abuse, that can lead into crash diets, that can lead into a whole range of miserable things. And then you suddenly yo-yo when you see a piece of fat on you. Man, the wave of depression that will hit you after that is not pleasant fun at all. And then on the flip side, if you're the person who wants a partner who's that physically attractive, go ahead. See how long you're attracted to that for a very long time if you both don't even have the same values and similar interests. Because I can guarantee the physical attraction will wear off like wallpaper down the road. I have been with physically attractive guys, and I can tell you that my interest in them was purely personal, not physical.
Right, right. And you had said something a little bit earlier about worrying about other people and what they're thinking. Like, man, everyone is worrying about what they're going through. They're not really giving a shit too much about you, And I think that's another thing too. We get really. Do you feel that the gay community has a pressure? Not all, we can't say all, but there's many men in the gay community feel a pressure to be liked, like a needingness to be liked, and like there's probably more than we could imagine of people pleasers in the gay community, dude.
Oh, yeah.
There's a people pleaser in me. I was triggered today, actually. I was in a group conversation with some peer coaches, and I said one comment. I said a word that triggered somebody else, and it upset them. And what instantly came inside me was, oh shit, fuck, they hate me. I fucked up. I look like an idiot, this and this and that. And I'm like, wait. What is this all coming from? What is this all coming from? This is coming from me needing to be liked because being gay, I wasn't liked. Feeling, it showed me how that my people pleasing stemmed truly from my insecurity of being gay, because it all started from them. I'm like, how can I be super nice, super complimenting, super sweet, because since I am gay, I need them to really, 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 really like me. I need them
Yeah.
to really, really, really accept me. So I got to be like the funniest guy, the sweetest guy, the nicest guy, always saying yes, always doing this. And I feel like probably a lot of us are unaware that we are such people pleasers because of the fact that we're just looking for acceptance since day one. And then it adds and builds up into this, like, pretty toxic behavior of where we're putting ourselves fucking last, to the point of where even when we're working out, because there's guys with six packs who still think they're ugly, you know and it takes a lot. It's going to take a lot of people to start self-reflecting. That's the big thing, and mutually understanding themselves, and understanding your emotions, understanding, why do I do these things? Why do I, or why do I don't do these things? Why do I avoid these things? Why am I always focusing on this? Which is like my I preach self-awareness because it's like the answer to so many things, no matter who the fuck you are, who the fuck you're, or what you're really dealing with. You have to interview yourself and ask yourself, hey man, like, what's my MO? Why am I even doing this? Who am I trying to please? Whose love am I looking for? Whose acceptance am I looking for? You know?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think to add to that too, because I think this ties nicely into, how do we work to appreciate ourselves more holistically? Here's the thing, which is going to sound like, I'm about to just go back on stuff that I just said. I actually think it's so important to actually be mindful, though, of our health and our bodies, which is going to be just might sound a bit contradictory to just what I was talking about before, but from a holistic point of view,
Yes.
because it's all very good and well to shit on the people who are in the fitness industry or trying to get fitter, but what's different is an obsession versus good health. I know I operate best when I exercise regularly. I know I operate best when I eat clean. I don't eat sugar, not because I've got some ridiculous notion of, like, oh, well, I'm dieting and I'm worried about what 1 gram of sugar is going to do to my entire physical appearance. No, it's because I generally break out with acne and I don't feel very good about that. Like, it's just more of a thing that I feel with that aspect of it too. And then when it comes down to, stress, high cortisol, I'm like, I generally prefer to do things that actually don't put a lot of stress on my body because it impacts things like irritable bowel syndrome. So, I think that it's so important as we're addressing our feelings up here to then reconnect with our central nervous system and go, is what I am doing in favor and service of my whole life? Because as you were saying before, okay, I can say with great confidence that what I do as a relationship coach is here to serve the gay community, and I am so grateful for that. And there also has to be a flip point of that, which is if my cup, my being, is not being filled at 100%, how the hell can I serve anyone in an impactful way? Because if I am unfit, if I'm feeling miserable, if I'm feeling tired, if I'm feeling depressed because of the actions that I've taken in my world, then I'm not going to be able to show up and be there for people in the community. So that's why I think even though the obsession is unhealthy because that's rooted in self-loathing, self-love is where you actually start doing things for yourself because you know it serves a greater purpose.
That's the whole point, babe. It's like, yo, working out is fine. There's nothing wrong with having, like, being really adamant about it. But it's, what space are you coming from? Are you coming from a place of fear, meaning I need to do this in order to be good enough, XYZ? Or are you coming from a place of self-love? Are you coming from a place of fear? It's all about what's the meaning behind it? What is the true reasoning behind it? Is it coming from a place of already being fulfilled and just maintaining, or looking in for the hopes of that, well, if I look like this, then I'll be happy. I will only be happy if this, like that. If you can't find happiness now, it will always be when, or if
Exactly.
the pursuit of happiness. That's what it will always be. it will always be a pursuit for you if you can't just learn to love what is, you know? And if that's difficult for you, that's when you do the self-inquiry and you say, well, what's the true deal? What is the true deal? What do I really need? You know? So, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And I think that, for the people who are trying to get to that stage of looking more physically appealing, I mean, I'd say, like, I've had people say to me things like, oh, I need to lose weight by eating fewer than 1,200 calories. I just think to myself, well, that sounds like torture. So you actually like hurting yourself. You like abusing yourself in order to try and fit in with the people who expected you. I mean, if I were to strip that comment down to a lot of things, it goes back to a lot of what we've said before, and I just think that there's self-loathing, there's people-pleasing, putting yourself dead last in order to please other people by the way you show up, and I think that, the real question remains, which is, if this is what you want, wouldn't you prefer to feel good today about how you are and all that you have? Like, you're talking about in your bragging journal, like all the good things that you have about yourself, rather than feeling this incessant need to just get along with other people. And in fact, if anything, that I think is the real problem right there, which is you don't feel like you get along with people. Because I think that if you don't feel that you're enough, then that's the real thing that needs to be unpacked. And as hard as it may be for some people to even acknowledge that they actually have something that they need to work on, responsibility lies with us at the end of the day to actually take ownership of that.
Yeah. When we live to please other people, we're going to end up building so much resentment and so much anger, and you you end up be you'll end up even having resentment towards yourself, and then you end up being against yourself. It's like, well, how long are you going to live for others? How long are you going to do what others are? How long? Who's breathing the air in your lungs, them or you? Whose life is it? You know, when are you going to start saying yes to you? When are you going to start? And like, what's it going to take? And like you said, some people, it might take people to actually go through that shit, to then finally realize, well, hopefully that, that doesn't happen. That's not the case for everybody, because, that's a painful road, and we're going through enough pain, we're going through enough pain. I feel that, as gay people, we have such a special perspective on what it means to be human and what it means to live on this planet, and when we start, healing within ourselves and healing within the community, we can be such an example, we can be, because I mean, there's a reason it's called the Pride Parade. It's a reason it's called the Love Parade. And if we can really embody that by truly showing that to ourselves and each other within our community, then, people are going to be wishing they were gay, instead of kids growing up hating it, And I think we have enough love in us and enough passion within us to really help each other grow when we decide to start loving ourselves and helping ourselves. When you decide to love yourself, when you start being there for yourself, you automatically want to show other people how to do it too, and it's going to take bravery and courage, It's going to take bravery and courage, and but we can do it. We can do it.
I completely agree with you. And I think my final comment on this is that I think that for a lot of people, they can actually learn holistically that they can still have their cake and eat it too, if they do it for the right reasons. Meaning, if you want the body, great, but do it for yourself. Because if you're operating out of self-love, you'll just continue to feel better and better about each achievement. And every time you maybe drop back a bit, you'll be like, you know, I'm further ahead than I was a few days ago or a few weeks ago or even a few years ago. That's progress. So I think when you take a different approach to the way you're looking at it, and I think when we also operate out of self-love, we're able to enjoy this experience and have the components of it for the right reasons. You know, I remember when we first spoke, Steve, you mentioned something to me, which you kind of touched upon already, which I just love whenever you talk about this, is this idea of us being, you know, the ambassadors of self-love and also being people who really embody what that means. You know, can you share for everyone who's been listening and will listen to this when it goes into an IGTV, you know, what is your vision for the gay community? Like, what would you love us ideally to be at a stage at? Because when you said it to me last time, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so mesmerized by this. I love it.
My vision is that we do the work in-house first, right? We're doing the work in-house first. We're doing the work we're diving within ourselves individually. Then we're coming together within our groups, within the community, and sharing what we found within our healing in ourselves, share it with others, heal with each other, take pride in our uniqueness as a community to show other people and the rest of the world that we are thriving because we are so individualistic. You guys can do the same damn too. We are thriving on how we are building so many wonderful relationships within our community because we are so the fact that we're called LGBTQ because we're all queer people, and queer means, you know, different. Queer means, you know, like abstract or whatever. And when we honor each other for our differences so well and lift each other up because we have differences within our community, and we show others that we are thriving within our community because of that, we will just be a prime example of how the rest of the world can emulate that. The rest of the world can take it and run with it. You know, we have the perspective of what it's like to be a man holding so much feminine energy within him because he is looking to be with another man. And then we have women who are holding this masculine energy of looking to be with another woman. Like that whole perspective shows like a new meaning as far as like what it means to be a person. And if we hold like the light, if we hold the torch as far as like, you know, you're not just what the organ you have between your legs, you know, you're more than what they say you are, and we are the living embodiment of that. People will get past their fucking hang-ups, you know, and they will be able to discover so much within themselves that they've never even thought, you know. And I feel that if we do the work on ourselves and then start helping each other within our community, and we be that example, the world will just follow. The world will just follow.
I agree. I agree with you completely. And I think that it's actually in our design. Like, I think as human beings, we're built for being happier and more, you know, feeling good about ourselves. I don't think that we're meant for, yes, ego death. That is exactly right. I think that the only reason we have an ego is because it was there to protect us when times were shit during childhood. And I think now we're of an age of consciousness where it's like, not really helping us. It's kind of keeping us small. And I think that being gay men, I think because we are going through such extreme challenge, that for us to have sort of more of an awakening is more possible, because I know from my own personal experience, when I was heartbroken, being in that state allowed me to re-examine parts of my life that weren't working and then go, oh, shit, I've been really living a bit of a disingenuous life, and it wasn't really serving me in a way that was healthy. So I think it's certainly possible for our community as a whole And I noticed too that Scorpio Pappy asked a really great question, I think, to end this, which is how do you advise people to operate out of self-love? I guess I'll throw this to you, Steve, because I mean, whilst I can share my thoughts and feelings on this, I feel like this is your baby. What would you say to people who want to just get started on that?
How do you advise people to operate out of self-love? Well, take it, step out of yourself and look at yourself as a person. What would you give that man in the mirror? What does he need? What does he deserve? You know, start giving him that. Start being that. You know, like I said, you know, being your own best friend. You know, how do you advise people to operate out of self-love? Operating out of self-love meaning it means to know when you are disempowered, to know when you're giving up too much, when to start recognizing your actions, and if they're coming from a place of where like you're putting yourself last, you know, make your actions for the benefit of yourself and the benefit of other people. But it's like you are the first person that needs to get the love you give out. You're the first person it hits. It has to hit you first. And that's it. Make that the goal. You know, make you the first person to receive all the good, all the wonderful shit you like to give to other people. Make sure that you're getting it first. And when you operate from there, from that space, then you're gonna give people what they really deserve and what they truly do. And you're gonna give people what they should be receiving from you, you know?
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I love everything that you said. I think to help people through this, the one thing I would say is take the word selfish out of your vocabulary. Take the word egotistical out of your vocabulary. Are either of those words serving you? Because I think a lot of the time when we hear put ourselves first, people automatically defend that going, oh, but that's selfish. Like, no, it's fucking not. You know, we've been given that language by the wrong people because they are operating out of self-loathing. And to be quite frank, do you even want to be following their advice in the first place? Like, I mean, when you look at them, it's just like, oh, great, I don't want to be you. I don't want to be this person that's, you know, miserable with themselves. So, and the funny thing is that they'll often be then like, family first. You know, think about what your others think around you. What would your boss think if you did that? Why did that person think that way of you? You know, who gives a crap what anyone thinks of you? And once you liberate yourself from that ideology, once you liberate yourself from caring, you'll experience a realm of freedom that you've never felt before. And I think that the other part of it too is just acknowledging your strengths. It's egotistical when you say things that are out of proportion. Like, for example, if you said, I am the best golf player in the world, well, that's delusional. But if you say, I am strong at golf, I am strong at fitness, I am a strong athlete, if you've got plenty of evidence to prove that to be true, you're operating out of truth, not ego. In fact, ego is often the reverse, which is going, I'm not good enough at this. I'm not good enough at the gym. I'm not good enough to look like this person. So I think the real framework I try and give people is be mindful of the language you use on yourself, because then it makes this work so much easier.
Yeah, all total self-awareness. It's always about, I mean, like, if you're not aware of yourself, you're not gonna be aware of the action that you do and the effect that you have on other people. You know, you'll be completely blind to it. But yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, likewise, Steve. I've really enjoyed it. My one last thing that I'd like to ask you is, for people in my audience, where can they find you if they want to connect with you and chat with all the things that you do?
Yes, you can check me out on my Instagram page, just Steve Matos. I also have a link to my website, stevematos.com, where you can also hit the connect button and sign up for a free 15-minute clarity call where I ask you a few questions to see if I can be of any help to you. Okay?
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for hopping on here, because I'm feeling energized after our chat. I thought that was absolutely incredible. To everyone who joined, thank you very much as well, because this was such an invigorating conversation. And I hope everyone is enjoying their day, their time, their life. And Steve, you and I will obviously chat down the line. So yeah, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you too. Have a great day. Bye, everybody. Thank you for showing up.
See ya. Bye bye.